The man rushes out of the house in panic, looks up, and sees dense flocks of birds screaming as they fly into the sky, as if they sense an approaching disaster and are desperately trying to escape. Just as he stands there confused, a massive shockwave slams into him and knocks John to the ground. He scrambles back to his feet and runs home to check what happened. At this moment, the living room is full of neighbors who are having a party. The panicked crowd learns from the television that a fragment of a comet has just crashed into Earth. The fragment is the size of a football field, and the shockwave it caused stretched for thousands of kilometers. The city at the impact center was instantly reduced to ashes. Even worse, no one knows how many fragments are still coming. This is a massive comet fragment swarm, and if nothing goes wrong, Earth will suffer a devastating strike in 2 days. The horrifying images on the TV leave everyone standing there in shock. Suddenly, John's phone rings with a piercing alarm. It is a presidential alert. A cold robotic voice tells John that he has been selected and must take his wife and son to an assembly point for evacuation. He also receives an exclusive identity QR code. The alert message automatically syncs to the TV in the house. The neighbors are confused as to why only John received the alert. They rush back to their own homes to check their phones. This is already the second time John has received this alert today. Combined with the shockwave he just witnessed, he knows this is real. John tells his wife Allison to quickly pack some essentials. Then they drive toward the assembly point. Once outside, he realizes that he seems to be the only one in the neighborhood who was selected. None of the neighbors received a message. Most of them stand outside their houses, staring blankly at the apocalyptic sky. A female neighbor runs out and blocks John's car, begging him to take her family with them. She says that even if he cannot take everyone, taking her daughter would be enough. John refuses without hesitation. Allison immediately scolds him, saying that taking one more child would not hurt anyone.
Babe, John, we gotta go back!
Ali, we can't take her.
But why?
What? So we take her to the airbase and then leave her standing there alone when they turn her away?
As night falls, John's family gets closer and closer to the assembly point. Allison tries to call her father, but there is no signal. John sees people looting on the streets. Supermarkets, pharmacies, and shopping malls have become the worst-hit areas. The roads are packed with more and more cars. When they reach the military base outside the assembly point, the massive crowd confuses Allison. Clearly, not everyone here was selected. The situation is extremely chaotic. Outside one of the base entrances, a dense crowd has gathered. Many people without identity QR codes are stopped by soldiers. The military clearly anticipated that large numbers of civilians would rush here. John pushes forward with his wife and child through the crowd. After great effort, they finally reach the front. A soldier scans his QR code and allows them inside. At another checkpoint, they are given 3 wristbands. Only people with wristbands are allowed to board the plane. Due to regulations allowing only one special backpack per family, John and Allison open their suitcases and try to pack as much as possible. Suddenly, Allison realizes their son's medicine bag is missing. John thinks it was left in the car. He tells Allison to stay where she is and not move. After getting permission from a soldier, John runs back out to look for the medicine. Allison stays behind with their son, waiting. After several minutes, John still has not returned. An anxious Allison approaches a soldier to ask about her husband. When the soldier hears that her son has diabetes, he immediately reports it to his superior. Allison is quickly taken to a small room. A female officer who appears to be high-ranking tells Allison that selected evacuees are not allowed to have chronic illnesses. The child was selected by mistake. Now that the error has been discovered, he cannot be allowed on the plane. Allison cannot believe such a rule exists. She desperately begs the officer. In the end, the officer still refuses to let Allison and her son board the plane. They are politely asked to leave. Meanwhile, John successfully finds the medicine bag in the car. When he returns to the base, Allison and their son are gone. They were told to wait right there. Now the phone will not connect, and shouting in the crowded airport is useless. John assumes they boarded the plane first. The destination of the planes is classified. After confirming with a soldier that all planes are going to the same place, John boards one himself. The cabin is already packed with people. Unable to find his family, John tries to text Allison again. A man nearby notices the medicine bag in John's hands and asks how someone with an illness can still board the plane. He says his nephew was denied boarding because of diabetes. The words stun John. He suddenly realizes his son's condition may have been discovered. They might not be on the plane at all. As the plane door is about to close, John rushes forward, demanding it be opened. The soldiers warn him that if he leaves, he cannot reboard. John insists. The door is opened. At that moment, a piercing alarm blares across the airport. An entrance to the base has been breached. The massive crowd outside storms in, desperate to board the planes and survive. They ignore the soldiers completely. Some even open fire on them. Chaos erupts. A soldier refueling an aircraft is shot and collapses. Fuel spills across the ground. John realizes something terrible is about to happen. He warns the people behind him to get off the plane, and then runs for his life. The once orderly evacuation collapses into total chaos. Gunshots and screams fill the air. A spark ignites the spilled fuel, causing a massive fire. John looks back at the sea of flames, shaken but alive. Soldiers direct people to evacuate. John grabs a soldier and asks about his family. The soldier remembers them and says Allison and the child already left the base. John immediately runs outside. Tragically, many unaware people are still forcing their way in. John finds his car and discovers a note left by Allison. She says they are waiting at her father's house. Even though the phone still does not work, John finally breathes a sigh of relief. His wife and son are safe. Elsewhere, Allison takes her son to a nearby shopping mall. His insulin is almost gone, and she must find a pharmacy. The mall has clearly been looted. As she searches, a gunshot rings out. Armed thugs storm in, firing shots and forcing everyone out. Allison crouches low and tries to sneak away with her son. Innocent people fall around them. As they reach the exit, an armed young black man blocks their path. Seeing a frightened mother and child, he hesitates, then lets them go unharmed. Outside, Allison sees a woman about to get into a car and begs for help. The couple agrees to give Allison and her son a ride. The driver says they are heading to an airport, and although they were not selected, they hope that if they get there, they might get lucky and sneak onto a plane. From the couple's words, it is clear that they deeply resent those who were selected, believing that only wealthy people and elites were chosen, and that ordinary people like them never stood a chance. At this moment, the child innocently says that their family of 3 was actually selected. Hearing this, a trace of malice immediately appears in the driver's eyes. Allison is then forcibly dragged out of the car, and her wristband is stolen. The couple plans to pretend to be Nathan's parents in order to gain a chance to board the plane. Watching the car drive away, Allison chases after it in despair, crying helplessly, unable to understand how people who looked kind just moments ago could change so suddenly. She waves frantically at passing cars on the road, trying to seek help. But in the face of the apocalypse, everyone is only concerned with escaping for their own lives, and no one stops for her. Meanwhile, John is also trying to find a car to drive to Allison's father's house so they can reunite. But without a key, there is no car he can use. He sees many people gathered together celebrating wildly, while others stand outside a church looking up at the sky and praying. Instead of trying to escape, they choose to enjoy what may be their final moments, some even drinking alcohol while admiring the spectacular scene in the sky. They seem completely different from those who stormed the military base earlier, as if they belong to another species altogether. While searching for a vehicle, John discovers a truck that is tightly covered and immediately asks if he can get a ride. After hearing that they are heading in the same direction, the driver agrees to let him on, and there are several other people already inside the truck. John learns from a kind black man that they are also planning to board a plane to reach a shelter, and that the location of the highly confidential shelter is very likely in a place called Greenland. The man invites John to go with them, but John refuses, saying that he still needs to find his wife. He explains that he also has a chance to board a plane because his mother is a doctor and was selected, but due to past conflicts, he left home 7 years ago and has had no contact with her since. John says he believes he was selected because he is a structural engineer. At this point, a man sitting across from him hears that John was selected and immediately demands that he hand over his wristband. A violent fight breaks out inside the truck, distracting the driver and causing the vehicle to lose control, sending everyone involved in the fight flying out. When John regains consciousness, he sees that the man is still trying to take his wristband. So John grabs a hammer from the ground first and strikes him brutally, killing him. The scene terrifies the others, because even in the apocalypse, killing someone still requires enormous courage. Seeing this, no one dares to try to take John's wristband again, and they all flee. Unfortunately, the kind man who had been on John's side is killed in the crash. John silently mourns him for a second before continuing on his journey alone. Meanwhile, the driver and his wife arrive at another evacuation assembly point with the child they are pretending is their son. Under heavy military guard, identities are being verified in an orderly manner. The driver holds Nathan and lies, saying their wristbands were stolen and that only the child's remains. At this moment, Nathan finally speaks up and says that the two people are not his parents. The alert soldiers immediately realize something is wrong, take the child away, order other soldiers to escort the couple away, and comfort the frightened boy. After desperately flagging down cars for a long time, Allison finally encounters a kind stranger who stops to help her. With their assistance, she quickly arrives outside the assembly point. After explaining the situation to the soldiers, she successfully reunites with her son, and a nurse inside the tent even prepares a week's supply of medicine for Nathan. Allison is so overwhelmed that she does not know how to thank them. The next day, Allison takes her son and heads toward her father's house, and on the road they encounter John and her father driving toward them. After their brief separation, the family is finally reunited. Because the trajectory of the Clark Comet fragment swarm is extremely long and far beyond experts' initial predictions, the consequences are far more severe than expected. As the entire world falls into despair, television broadcasts information about various shelters, allowing people to seek refuge nearby. John has decided to head for Greenland, but first, they must reach the small military base mentioned earlier to board a plane. However, Allison's father refuses to go with them, because if he leaves, there will be no one left to take care of his horses. While they are talking, another comet fragment crashes nearby, and the massive shockwave sweeps across dozens of kilometers, causing the old house to shake violently. Even so, the father still refuses to leave the place where he has lived his entire life. Unable to persuade him, John and Allison have no choice but to give up, and under the father's gaze, they drive away and continue their escape. Unfortunately, the situation on the road is even worse than they imagined. Severe traffic jams appear, and even worse, another cluster of small fragments begins to fall. People on the road scream and scatter in panic. Realizing the danger, John immediately turns the car and drives into the forest beside the road in search of cover. In the face of such a catastrophic disaster, humanity appears incredibly fragile. Eventually, they find shelter beneath a bridge. Seeing a driver who has been knocked unconscious after his car was struck by fragments and is about to explode, John teams up with another passerby to rescue him, while John's own hand is severely burned in the process. By hiding under the bridge, this small group narrowly escapes death. After night falls and it is finally safe, John gets back on the road. At this time, a NASA announcement comes over the radio, stating that in 6 hours, the largest fragment in the swarm will reach Earth. This fragment is even larger than the one that wiped out the dinosaurs. It will instantly destroy most of Europe, trigger massive earthquakes, generate tsunamis over 300 meters high, and unleash winds approaching 500 degrees, spreading outward at the speed of sound. This chain reaction will be devastating to all life on Earth, and preliminary estimates suggest that 90% of plants and animals will perish. Hearing this, John and Allison remain silent, and John simply turns off the radio. After several more hours of driving, they finally reach the military base. John floors the accelerator and crashes through the fence, then drives directly in front of a plane that is about to take off, forcing it to stop on the runway. The furious pilot gets out and tells John that the plane is already full and that they can wait for the next one. But John knows there may not be another chance in. A few hours. This could be their last opportunity to escape. When the pilot refuses to let them board, John says that if they are not allowed on the plane, he will keep the car parked on the runway so the plane cannot take off. Even if it is already full, adding one woman and one child should not be a problem, because all he wants is for his wife and son to have a chance to live. For the sake of the dozens of passengers on board, the pilot asks John's weight and reluctantly agrees to let the family board. John moves the car away, but with the plane already overloaded, the extra weight makes a normal landing impossible. After several hours of flight, daylight breaks, and although the scenery is breathtaking, no one has the mood to appreciate it. The distant mountains indicate that Greenland is close, but at that moment, a large comet fragment crashes into the sea, and the shockwave nearly causes the plane to crash. Through the pilot's desperate efforts, the aircraft skids and slams into an iceberg before coming to a stop. All the passengers survive, but both pilots lose their lives. With no time to mourn, everyone disembarks and continues forward. Fortunately, Soldiers from the shelter see the damaged plane and send military vehicles to rescue them. After 2 days of exhausting travel, John's family finally arrives at the shelter, having witnessed countless people die along the way in their desperate attempts to survive. As everyone rushes inside, an alarm sounds, warning that the largest fragment is about to hit. Soldiers urgently direct people into the shelter and seal the doors tightly. Because the shelter is old, no one knows whether it can withstand the disaster, and everything is left to fate. Sitting together, John's family prepares to face the final 10-second countdown to impact. 9 months later, the Greenland shelter receives confirmation from other shelters that it is safe, and only then do they open a door. What appears before them is a reborn Earth. Although it is covered in ruins, birds flying overhead prove that life is still possible, and those who survived now bear the responsibility of rebuilding the human world.